Now, some may look at this like it's not big news. I personally, in my opinion, my professional opinion, I think this is big news. It may not seem like it is on the surface, but what it could potentially become, I'm hoping and praying that it's something huge and something wonderful for the professional wrestling industry. So the news came out yesterday, and it was like a trickle. Like, you heard it one thing, then you heard a little something else from someone else, and it just slowly started gaining steam throughout the day. Is that Billy Corgan, former, what was that company he had? Resistance Pro, whatever it was in Chicago. I'm sorry, I forgot what name it was. He owned that for a while. Then he was, in the loops in becoming the owner of TNA last year, which, he became the underdog in that, and eventually everything fell through. And, I think a lot of people were excited about him being aboard. I was too. I was excited for what could possibly come down the road, what he could bring to Impact Wrestling, what is now Impact Wrestling, because TNA is dead. And it just, nothing worked out. Things got really ugly between the Carters and Corgan, and so it is what it is. The big question on everybody's mind was he going to go back to professional wrestling? Was this going to sour him on the business? And I think a lot of people probably counted him out after that. And, you didn't hear anything for a while. He did some of his own personal projects on his YouTube channel, which I'll probably check out eventually. It was kind of like a road trip diaries kind of thing. I don't know what it all was involved with, but nonetheless, now the news came out, and apparently this took a while to process, but he is purchasing the National Wrestling Alliance, the NWA, the classic brand NWA. Excuse me. So, and that's the thing. NWA, when people think of NWA, you think of the lineage behind it. You think of Ric Flair. You think of the Big Belt. You think of, not the Big Belt. The Big Belt came along with WCW. You think of just all the phenomenal wrestlers that came along with that brand back in the day. And then, side note, if you want to know a brief history, it doesn't go into too much detail, but just a brief history, and it actually told me a lot. Go to pwinsider.com. The initial press release gives a brief, but how do I say this? It doesn't go into a lot of details, but it's still a fairly long article on the history of the company of the NWA. And that's the thing, I don't think fans really know a lot about it, because throughout history, whatever the NWA was tied to, whether it was WCW or TNA's inception, when WCW died or was bought, I think people assumed that the NWA went along with it, like died with it. But it didn't. And I think people also assumed that when Jeff Jarrett had his NWA TNA championship, and then there was some kind of falling out, and that's one thing I don't think a lot of people know about as far as what happened with all that. But this article on pwinsider.com just briefly goes over, okay, then, the NWA was tied with this, and then this guy took it over. Just a brief history. Go check it out. It's a long read, but it's a good read. And so then this gentleman who's owned it for the last few years basically was taking the NWA name, tying it to different... I don't know how to say this without making it sound negative. He was selling the name to different wrestling companies, like independent companies, like saying, hey, you can use this name, but you have to pay me to use the NWA in front of your name. Okay? And to me, it's a business, and I understand it, but to me, that almost sounds like more of a negative thing. Like it's an attempt to bring back the territory feel, but the process of it almost sounds like you're whoring out the name. That's me, and someone else may have a different opinion on that, and that's fine. It just when you break it down briefly of what it's been going through the last handful of years, that's what it sounds like to me. And I could be wrong, but it is what it is. Now, Billy Corgan is purchasing the NWA brand from this Bruce Tharpe, whatever his name is. And I wanted to wait till we got, because the news that came out yesterday was really brief. There was hardly any details at all. But we do have details today that just came out, so I wanted to jump on this. And this is courtesy of 411mania.com. There's some bullet points here I'm going to go over. There are no tape libraries involved in the purchase. The NWA on-demand streaming website, which utilizes and I'm going to screw this name up, I know, and I apologize. It's Boesch. Is that Boesch? I'm trying to think of the OE as a German thing. Boesch or Bosch? We'll just say Boesch. Because I know, like, the German OE is A, so we'll just say Boesch. And if that's wrong, I apologize. But the Boesch Family Library from Houston is also not involved. Corgan is not buying any footage as part of this purchase. That's very interesting. Once Corgan finalizes a sale, he will assess the brand and build a plan for going forward. This will be the first of many steps, so don't expect big moves from Corgan's NWA right away. This is going to take, he's not going to have stuff. It's like, oh, here's the NWA. Here's you got your roster, your TV deal. This stuff takes a time, okay? This is going to take time. He is doing this from the ground up, from basically a dead brand. And all right, I'll go over this and I'll give some more thoughts on it. Dave Lagana, formerly of Impact, is 100% on board with the project and is working with Corgan. That's a plus. I look at that as a plus. There is technically no members of the NWA. That's interesting. Bruce Tharpe owned the NWA and brand. He was instead selling licenses for promoters to use the NWA initials. That's like what I just said before, these bullet points. At this time, there have been no talks of talents attached to the promotion. Corgan is focusing on completing the sale and building his plans and strategies for the NWA brand name. The article I was reading yesterday see if I can quickly find this. Excuse me. Okay, this is the second bunch of news, if you can, tied to the whole Billy Corgan thing yesterday. Bruce Tharpe posted the following on his social media. I'm very excited for the future of the National Wrestling Alliance. As everyone knows by now, Billy Corgan and I have agreed on principle regarding his acquisition of the NWA brand. This decision comes after many weeks of negotiation and deep consideration. Although Billy Corgan may be a fresh face to wrestling, he is an extremely successful businessman and has a deep admiration and respect for the NWA. That's very important right there. He's not just buying it to, yes, it is a business, but he wants to do something with it. He's got the passion. He's not just buying it to say, I own the NWA, and then whatever happens after that, whatever. He's not owning it for the sake of owning it. He wants to build prestige behind it again. With the capital and business acumen that Billy Corgan brings to the table, I am confident that he has the ability to take the NWA to the next level, and I have promised to do all I can to help him succeed. I ask you to join me in supporting the new NWA regime in the future. I am not leaving wrestling, but after 4 years at the helm of the NWA, I look forward to stepping back and allowing someone new and passionate to take control of this great and noble organization. Thank you to everyone who has supported the NWA over the years. I want to publicly thank Billy Corgan for his confidence and respect for this iconic brand. The next few months are going to be really interesting for the National Wrestling Alliance, but most of all for the fans. So yeah, this is, like I said, this is going to be baby steps. You'd have to think that a guy like Billy Corgan and I think he is a big name. Maybe not as big a name in the world of wrestling, but he is a big name for entertainment purposes, okay? And the whole respect in the world of pro wrestling will come, for those who don't follow the TNA Impact stuff, all the drama that happened over the course of the last year, you're not going to know what all happened with that, and I invite you to go check that out. The articles that I read, the article I read yesterday was very interesting and gave some back history on all that. Informed me of a lot of stuff that I did not know. So, yeah, please go check that out. And, so you got to assume he's going to go for a TV deal. You got to assume that he's going to start talking to top indie talents. And that's going to be a little tricky because, there's so many top indie talents that have working relationships and or contracts with different wrestling companies. I don't want to say wrestling entertainment brands. You've got all the guys tied with the WWN. You've got the group that's tied in with the AWA Lucha Underground. You, of course, have WWE. You can't touch that. You have Impact Wrestling's new ventures. You got to be careful with that because now they're in ties with Pro Wrestling Noah out of Japan, AAA, and what is Conan's company? Crash? Whatever it's called. Conan's company. Conan's Crash, whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of different pockets of companies and groups that people are tied to, but you still see certain independent contracting pro wrestlers jumping all over the place. One other thing I found very interesting from that article that I'm going to touch on is said that Sinclair almost bought the NWA. And that was back when they were in the process of looking for a wrestling brand to purchase. Now, what would be really interesting is to find out the behind-the-scenes story of all that. To see exactly how close they were in purchasing that brand. In fact, in the article, it says something to the effect of somewhere in an alternative universe, Sinclair has a weekly broadcast, hey kitties, of the NWA brand, and Ring of Honor doesn't even exist. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. I tried looking for a few answers, which it's just one of those things. The NWA has a website, but the one thing about it is, and I don't mean to insult the company or the brand, but when you look at the page, it's really confusing, because if you go into the website and you start looking to see like who's all tied to the NWA, and you look at the list of companies tied to it, there's like 20 different companies, and it's like, holy crap, who? How do you keep up? I mean, if you're a fan of the lineage of the NWA, how the hell do you keep up with 20 different companies and champions and tag team champions and women champions and all that stuff? And I'm not knocking any of the individual ones. I'm just saying, and I'm sure they all have their own great workers, champions, women, tag teams, such and such, and even secondary champions. But what I think, and that's another big question, is what is going to happen with all of those? Are they going to stay under the NWA brand name, or what's going to happen? Are they just going to kind of just all drift off into their own things, stay the companies they are, just lose the NWA name tag? I don't know. That's all stuff that's got to get worked out, because that's what it sounded like Bruce was doing, was selling the NWA name to all these different little companies to use it. So, which I get it. Like, it goes back to that discussion I was saying earlier about, well, those are all the different territories. Well, okay, but that's, you got 20 different companies you're dealing with. That gets, I would think that would be really hairy, okay? Or hard to keep track of, especially as a fan, I don't know. But anyways, but it sounds like Billy's going to have, he's got the NWA name, National Wrestling Alliance, and he's going to rebuild the NWA company from the ground up. One name that I've also heard that's going to be tied to it that has worked with Billy in the past is Conway. I believe he was a former NWA champion, or one of their last champions, during the whole period over the last few years when they were trying to get the brand tied with New Japan. because if you watch it on Access Television last year, like I did a little bit, you saw Matt Conway with the NWA Championship defending it over in Japan against, I can't remember who. It was just interesting. It was like, oh, NWA, you know. But, you know, even then, you didn't hear about it on, you know, on the news pages. It wasn't a big thing. And Billy Corgan is trying to do that again. And I give him a lot of credit. He could have used his money, purchased something that already has groundwork laid, already has a following. He's building something from the ashes, you know? And I think that's incredible. You know, he's going to probably try to figure out some exclusive contracts for specific independent wrestlers, get a TV deal going. So, I saw someone comment, I don't remember which article I read had what comments, but someone commented, watch for Billy Corgan's NWA on Spike TV. I don't think Spike TV is going to get back into the world of wrestling, especially if they've got, well, Spike UK has Impact Wrestling. And I don't think you're going to see competition on the American side of Spike. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked. If anything, they're going to go back with they're going to go back with Jeff Jarrett, I would think. I could be wrong. They're still with Pop TV, but who knows? So yeah, I mean, that's all we could, I depending on what news we hear, and we're probably not going to hear anything else for a while. This is going to take a while. This is something that we're going to have to be really patient with. Kind of like when the Global Force Wrestling was getting the ball rolling, or trying to get the ball rolling, I should say. Nothing against Jarrett. I give him a hell of a lot of credit for trying to do what he did, you know. But it's, you know, and this is, you know, this is going to be something kind of similar, but except, you know, Jeff Jarrett's company had no lineage behind it. He was basically just using his name to build a completely new brand, whereas Corgan has the rights now to the National Wrestling Alliance. Take that and start building things off of that. It's like, okay, let's get talent lined up. Let's get TV lined up. And I would love to be a fly on the wall and see the process of this. And if I know Corgan, he's going to use Lagana, and Lagana is going to start filming footage of some of this behind the scenes, the rebuilding of the NWA. I hope and pray that he does, because that would be something absolutely remarkable to see as a wrestling fan. The buildings from, you know, a grand company like the NWA, try to, you know, I say try because you don't know how this is going to work. This is, you know, this may go a lot easier than he thinks. This may be hard as hell. It depends on who all wants on board, you know? Who wants to be tied to this? Who wants to help rebuild this? That's the question. And is Billy going to be able to assemble that team? That's what this process is. He may already have a decent amount of people already in play in order to do this. I'm sure he's got something. I'm sure he's got, you know, a handful of lawyers. He's got David Lagana. He very well could have Matt Conway on board. And I really don't have an opinion on Matt Conway. All I know is that he used to be one of the main producers for TNA, from what I've heard. Was that last year? And then there was some kind of falling out when they got rid of freaking everyone, you know? Jeez Louise. So yeah, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. I'm very excited about this. Are you very excited about this? Or do you not care? You know, well, yeah, one thing I might do in the near future is it just kind of like what I did with that the AAA / Lucha Underground / Impact Wrestling speculation video. I might do a speculation video and just, you know, start picking names off of the independent scene as a guest to see who Billy Corgan might pick to help represent the new NWA. And that's difficult. That really is, because there's so many people tied to so many things out there. You know, but just to get the juices flowing, also, think about this. Who would you like to see represent the new NWA brand? Let me know. Leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'm sure somewhere in the near future I'll get another discussion topic video going on, you know, who could represent the NWA in the future. So yeah, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you real soon.